Welcome in, Fins faithful. Dolphins have a new direction, and the quarterback conversation is already heating up. One name that keeps popping up in the conversation, Malik Willis, especially with John Eric Sullivan now running the front office and head coach Jeff Hafley taking over. We'll get into the Malik Willis stuff shortly, but to really understand why this name keeps surfacing, it starts with the Sullivan-Hafley connection. Tonight, we're going to break this down, not as a rumor, not as a hot take, but a move that realistically could happen. We'll be joined by Packers writer for SI, Jacob Westendorf, who's been covering the Packers, who give us the inside scoop from the Green Bay perspective on Malik Willis and on what Sullivan and Hafley were really like inside the building. Then Jason and I will dive in to the new offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. Was he the right choice? Plus all the recent coaching hires as of today. Good thing we got a Packers guy on, because another Packers coach, we'll let you know who that was, signed up with the Dolphins today. So we'll talk about what all this means for the quarterback room, for the scheme, whatever. So hit that like button, jump into the chat. Let's talk about whether Malik Willis could be the Dolphins' next quarterback and more stuff. Sarni, how you doing, man? More news today with the Dolphins coaching staff, so we got a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about, a lot more reasons to dub Miami Green Bay South. So we got the right guy in with Jacob coming on in from SI covering the Packers. And, we're at the start of the offseason, and we got a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do in Miami.
A lot of work to do, but it's good. It's fun. Fun times ahead. The hope is up. We have a new regime. So let's bring in our guest, as I mentioned, Jacob Westendorf from Packers on SI. Jacob, thanks for joining us, man, giving your insight. It's Miami Packers down here. You're the right guy to have on. How you doing?
I'd like to think that's the case at least. But, yeah, it's good to be here. Super Bowl Sunday and everything, so we're kind of getting to the end of it. It's kind of sad, and I'm sure it's even more for you guys that have been through, 25 years of something like that, and you've seen the Patriots build their dynasty and then rebuild back into a Super Bowl team before Miami was able to kind of capitalize on some of that stuff. But, it's good to be here. Green Bay in an interesting offseason of their own. Some winds have changed there, and kind of a disastrous end of the season, if we're being 100% honest. But, it's good to be here and talk about a couple of my favorite guys that I've had a chance to speak with. So
and we'll talk about some guys that Packers have as free agents that could land here. There's a lot of connections, so we'll get into that. Let's start here. We'll start with the GM at the top. Tell us about Sully. He apparently likes to be called Sully. What do you know about him? What do you know about his day-to-day operation? Have you ever dealt with him, kind of person? What can you tell us about John Eric Sullivan?
Yeah, so I think that came through in his opening presser with you guys down there. Really bright guy, good talker, which, that whether or not that matters, I guess, is up to interpretation, but it certainly doesn't hurt from a media perspective. No. I met Sullivan for the first time last year during the draft, and it was shortly after the Packers had taken Anthony Belton, so just kind of getting his perspective on the team. But he's been in Green Bay since 2002, so he was here, Ron Wolf, kind of a disciple that way, and then into the Mike Sherman era and then the Ted Thompson era. And one thing about Green Bay is, they call it the Packer way, but it is the Ron Wolf way. And that's why you see, like, in New England, they have Elliott Wolf, who I don't know how much power he actually wields, but he's there, kind of established some of that structure. John Schneider, obviously in Seattle, the 2 Super Bowl teams, but John Dorsey was a Packers disciple. Ted Thompson, who was in Green Bay, built their Super Bowl team in 2010, Packers disciple. Brian Gutekunst, who's here in Green Bay, also Ron Wolf. But I think that when you listen to Sullivan, you hear about the type of player and stuff that he wants to bring through. And the first thing I heard him say was, our division goes through Buffalo and New York and Foxborough. So they're going to play in the elements. They're going to play in the cold. And one of the things he said last year that kind of stuck with me after they took Belton was, fast gets slow, but big doesn't get small. And I think that that's something you're going to see in Miami is I don't know, maybe it's just a reputation kind of thing, but the feeling I think around the league about the Dolphins is it's kind of a finesse. That's the nice way of saying it. The not so nice way of saying it is soft kind of team. And the Packers have been kind of a finesse team under Ted Thompson prior to Brian Gutekunst, and they were trying to sort of transition into a bigger, more rugged, is the phrase Gutekunst likes to use, kind of team. But I think that'll be kind of the type you're looking for with John Eric Sullivan. I think he'll build you guys up on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I think that's something they really valued. It might get a little frustrating at times because I think they'll be taking some high-end athletes, maybe with not as much college production as you might like, but guys that you're hoping the coaching staff can kind of develop with and everything. And they got a couple of really good guys out of Green Bay to do that as well. But I think Sullivan's really talented. He's really smart. I have yet to find anybody in Green Bay who's covered him even longer than I have that has anything bad to say about this guy. It was shocking last year when he did not get a job. I remember the media, they were basically saying goodbye to him in one of his press conferences because they thought that was going to be the last time that we talked to him. And it turned out he stuck around for another year. And Gunston Company were able to kind of take advantage of that. But it's a good spot for him, I think, in Miami. And I think, like I said, he'll be able to build up a team to, I guess competing with the Jets is what it is. But, the Patriots and the Bills and teams like that to kind of go through an AFC that could be in a bit of transition. New England is back in the Super Bowl, but I don't think anybody thinks they're this juggernaut. Like that could have been a lot of different teams this year. So, I think it's a prime time for Miami to kind of make a bit of a move, at least not into the Super Bowl next season or anything like that, but to start building their foundation.
Yeah. They were both guys are impressive. You can tell they speak, they're hard workers, they're grinders. They talk about
Hafley's great. You guys are going to love him.
Yeah, we'll get to Hafley. He stole the show, Hafley. But we talk about Sullivan. Any stories the last few years or when you've been there of guys he's advocated? I know he advocated for Jordan Love, apparently. I know there's always these stories. I love these draft stories just to get an idea because, sometimes you get – I always say it's not the best offensive defensive coordinator on the best team or even the best assistant GM on the best team because you don't really know what their involvement is and really who do they like. We don't have the scout sheets. Anybody to make Dolphin fans happy or not that he advocated for?
I know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say I know. Obviously, he spoke glowingly about Anthony Belton. I don't know specifically if he said draft that guy. Yeah, so he played guard for the Packers this year. But when he has that whole big doesn't get small thing, I think when you look at Anthony Belton, who has weighed anywhere up to 360 pounds, he's a big man, and just kind of his ability, he wants to play big man football and stuff like that. So I would imagine Sullivan, just based off of that, kind of connecting some dots. I would imagine he was kind of instrumental in the selection of like Lucas Van Ness, who the Packers took in the first round a few years ago. That hasn't quite worked out to where it is now. But, you mentioned Jordan Love. That's an organizational decision that everybody makes. And I think everybody kind of has to be on board with. And that's something that Miami's not in a position right now, I think, to take one of those quarterbacks and maybe let the guy sit and do kind of what the Packers had done with Aaron Rodgers for Brett Favre and Jordan Love with Aaron Rodgers specifically. But that's something I think that it could be different in Miami just because they do have an owner. Stephen Ross is, I don't know how much, he meddles and things like that, but that's always a possibility with ownership. That's something that doesn't exist in Green Bay. So they kind of have the freedom to take Aaron Rodgers with Brett Favre already in tow or Jordan Love with Aaron Rodgers already under center. So that's something I think that will be interesting to see. Do they let John Eric Sullivan kind of do not what he wants to do, you know what I mean? But how much of the Packers stuff is he going to be able to do down in Miami if he sees a player that he really, really likes or something like that? But like I said, I think big on both sides of the line. I think that's something you guys are going to end up finding. This Miami team 2-3 years from now, you're going to be like, our average size was this, and now it's bigger.
Jason, that's music to our ears.
That was literally what I was going to say because, the Dolphins do need to take a 180 approach to how they build their team from the inside out, but with the right players, with size. And you said it, they have to get into that more of a cold weather mindset. So really excited to see what Sully does on the draft. But I'd like to bring it to Hafley right now. Obviously the Dolphins had a lot of names that they were considering, a lot of rumors, but everybody that I've spoken to or read, and you even said it in the pre-show, we're going to love Hafley. And I'd love to know specifically why, what we should look out for him, and any specifics you have on him.
Yeah, so if you listen, and I, between talking to him when I've had the chances and then listening just to him speak, he is a teacher first and foremost. And I think that's something when you're talking defense especially, that's something that you want is not just, what are they doing, but why are they doing this kind of thing? And he'll explain it to you, and it's not cliched canned coach speak. Now, that is something that could change with him being a head coach instead of coordinator. That does naturally kind of change a few things here or there. But you guys saw it in his opener. He's great at the microphone. He's very genuine. And his players, too, like Micah Parsons, he said it with a smile on his face like he knew, but he was like, Hafley's not going anywhere. And that was because they didn't want him to go anywhere, obviously. But again, another guy that I have yet to find a defensive player. That wasn't always the case. Like, I think, is Joe Barry in Miami? Was he in Miami with McDaniel? Or he's been down there somewhat recently, right? Maybe I made that up in my – I might have made that up in my head, so forgive me if I did.
I'll look it up, though.
Forgive me if I did, but
No,
I
it's
know
okay.
Barry was Hafley's predecessor. And by the end of his tenure, it was kind of like, players trying not to step over themselves to say the wrong thing because they didn't really appreciate his vision or, whatever it was. But Hafley, the results at the end of this particular season weren't very good, but I think he's done, over the last 2 years, a tremendous job on the defensive side of the ball. And like I said, if the players love you, that's a really good first step to building some goodwill in your organization, because if they don't like you, obviously they're not going to end up playing for you. But I think you guys will see early just kind of that buy-in from the defensive side of the ball. Another thing that I think he'll do is determine, who are the best players on this side of the ball. Is it Chop Robinson and how am I going to get him in positions to succeed? Or is it somebody else that they bring in with him down from Green Bay, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. But I know, like his first season, for example, his opening presser, he was talking about all these characteristics he wanted in a free safety, a post safety. And he basically described Xavier McKinney, who, surprise, surprise, a couple of weeks later signed in Green Bay and had a first-team All-Pro season his first year in Green Bay. So I think he does a good job of trying to put who he feels his best playmakers are in position to succeed. So I think that's something you guys will see early on with some of those building blocks on defense.
You know
Talking
what?
about Barry, Barry basically flip-flopped with Anthony Campanelli. When Campanelli went to Green Bay to be the linebacker coach, Barry has been in Miami since 24, as a linebacker coach too. So
That's right. He is the linebacker.
I think he's still there.
Yeah.
I don't think. There'd be no reason to get rid of him right now in the reuniting with him. So
they might, because I know the linebackers coaching Green Bay is Sean Duggan, and Duggan was a guy that Hafley brought to Green Bay from.
That's a name we're going to talk about. That's a possible name for DC for the Dolphins. But I was going to say something. Hafley mentioned this on his press conferences. Look, I adjust to what I have.
Yep.
How did it change? He talked about how it changed when they acquired Micah Parsons.
Mm-hmm.
How did that kind of change? What did you see? That's a big deal for a guy like Parsons to just get under Hafley and all of a sudden, hey, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting how everything. So last year, the Packers did a lot of inverted coverages. They disguised a lot of things with their coverage team because they had a lot of good players, but they didn't have any great ones. Rashawn Gary was probably their best player on the defensive line a season ago, and he had a solid year, but he's not Micah Parsons. There's not very many players like that, to be very honest with you. He's impressive to say the very least. But I think that, again, he did a good job of finding okay, here's what Edgerrin Cooper does well as a rookie. And they kind of brought him along slowly. And by the end of the season, you saw his arrow kind of pointed upwards. And I still think he has a really good chance to be one of the best players in the league at his position. Xavier McKinney is the guy that I mentioned at the top, first team All-Pro as a safety. That's the first time he'd ever done that. 8 interceptions. Didn't have that total this year, but I don't think that was a byproduct of anything McKinney did differently. It's just when you have Parsons, the ball's got to come out, in a flash on the other side. And that's kind of how teams played the Packers this year. It was a lot of quick game. It was a lot of run game. It was a lot of screen game. Just because if you hold the ball, Parsons is going to get home. So it was interesting to watch. And then he kind of had to flip on the fly. And so Parsons tears his ACL in Denver in early December or mid-December, I guess. They have to play Chicago in 6 days. And through 58 minutes of that game, they held Chicago's offense to 9 points. The ending was a disaster, which was kind of a harbinger of things to come that year. But it wasn't as interesting enough to see kind of how things flipped. I really do at the end of the season too. Just think it was a talent disparity in Green Bay more than it was a schematic one, because I made the joke you could replace the 3 defensive tackles after Colby Wooden and changed them out with 3 other guys. And I couldn't have told you the difference as to who or what they were. Jordan Riley, God bless him, Jonathan Ford, Quinyon Bohanna. Just some of these guys, again, respect the profession. They're just guys, and they may not even be that. They might be replacement level or slightly below that at defensive tackle. And by the end of the year, they just kind of ran out of guys who could make plays, and unfortunately the end of the season is marred by a 25-point fourth quarter by the Chicago Bears that ultimately ended Green Bay's season. So that part leaves a kind of a rough taste in Packers fans' mouths. But I do think that, again, he's not going to come in here and say that I run this, so you must do this. It's no, here's kind of what I like to do. Here's some things we can do to fit that, but this is what I have. I have to fit those guys to that scheme.
So segueing to that perfectly, what are some of Hafley's calling cards? Dolphins have had some defensive-minded geniuses, so to speak. Brian Flores loved to do that zero blitz, loved to blitz corners. Anthony Weaver kind of sold as almost like a defensive line front seven guru, so to speak. So what is Hafley's tells? What's his tendencies?
Yeah, so he has a background in defensive backs. He was at Ohio State, which is, I won't hold that against him too much, but he was at Ohio State for a while doing DBs. He worked for Kyle Shanahan, coaching DBs. So that's kind of his background as defensive backs and being able to, like I mentioned, that disguise coverage. I remember he would always say during his first season that his goal was to be the best disguise team in the NFL. The other thing, every defensive coordinator, I guess, emphasizes this to some degree, but he wants to take the ball away. They had a big thing this year they called him the ball king. We were not allowed to refer to that gentleman by his real name, so they called him Ball King throughout the season. He said their goal was to lead the league in forced fumbles. Now, Green Bay's takeaway issue this year was well documented. They did not take the ball away enough, and especially considering when you have Micah Parsons. But again, I think more a byproduct of the corners in Green Bay, I think, did an admirable job considering what they are. Keyshawn Nixon's a guy who was brought over from the Raiders, who was a special teamer, who came over because of Rich Bisaccia to be a special teamer and kind of grew into a starting corner for them. Carrington Valentine's a 7th-round pick, and Nate Hobbs was a guy who came over from the Raiders again. I guess that's something they like to do for whatever reason. But none of those guys have like premier ball skills. I think the thing by the end of the season was Kevin Byard of the Bears had 7 interceptions by himself. Green Bay's entire secondary had 7 interceptions, and their cornerbacks had 1. It was Nixon's game winner against Chicago at Lambeau in December. So I don't think that was a byproduct of anything Hafley did or didn't do correctly. I just think that Green Bay's ball skills in the secondary leave something to be desired. But I do think disguised coverages, trying to confuse quarterbacks and things of that nature. I'll be interested to see how he does as a head coach. I do think he made some adjustments this year with Parsons, with the idea being kind of a more bend but don't break style, thinking that either Parsons or somebody will make the offense screw something up to make this huge negative play. But that kind of hurt the Packers in some spots because I think when Jordan Love is your quarterback, you want him to touch the ball as much as you can. They didn't take the ball away for enough opportunities like that. And unfortunately, in some of these games, they'd have like 6 or 7 possessions because these opposing teams would just go on these long 16, 18 play kind of drives because they couldn't get off the field. But I think that's something you'll look at. I don't know the state of Miami secondary anymore like I used to. And the last time I saw them was in Green Bay, and Storm Duck was playing corner. I don't think he's one of your guys' starters.
That's pretty much the state. I mean, when you got a guy like Storm Duck is the guy you remember.
Jacob, we got a former Packer here who's
Rasul our best Douglas.
Player. Fantastic last year. We got Jack Jones on the other side. We got a couple of young guys. The corner position is probably something we'll be looking at.
If they keep Rasul Douglas, I think he will have a big year.
Next year. Yeah, I was surprised how good he played this year. I mean, he came in. What was it, Jason? Like right before the season started, they've been chasing.
Yeah,
they were chasing Rasul for a while, and then they finally, I guess he finally said, "All right, I'll take what they're." Look, they're veterans. They don't want to sit. They don't want to go through training camp. They know their leverage. And shout out to everybody in the chat, by the way. We got over 113 people watching, guys. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We got Jacob Westendorf from Packers on SI talking about Sullivan and Hafley. He knows them as good as anybody. He's giving the Green Bay side of it. We're going to talk about Malik Willis. And then me and Jason end up talking about all the new hires and the coaching hires and Slowick and all that good stuff. But make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Hit that thumbs up. Thanks to Jeanette, Jacob, Balake, Cat and had everybody in the chat. Clown Prince, we appreciate it. You were mentioning Hafley's he's got that wide 9, like one gap system, right? Like they don't blitz a lot, right? That's one thing I know is it's mostly they played a lot of cover 1, but played a lot of cover 2 last year. I saw that. Is that kind of his tendencies?
It was last year with Parsons, and I think that was part of it as well. Right? They really emphasized not giving up explosive plays. And they were good at it, right? I think they at one point in the season, I don't know if it finished that way, but they led the league in least amount of explosives given up. So they did end up doing that. The problem was they would also get death by 1,000 paper cuts all the way down the field against some of these teams as well. I would have liked to have seen – I understand that when you're playing Matthew Stafford or, Drake May or some of these great quarterbacks across the NFL wanting to not give up the big plays and try and play it safe in that regard. I think the issue that I had was like during the year, they're playing Jameis Winston in the Giants, and it's his first start of the season. Winston should be a guy who I think you're aggressive with and trying to get to throw 2-3 interceptions. And I guess to their credit, he threw them the ball like 3 or 4 times. They just only caught one of them during the course of the game. But the Giants were able to shorten that game because Green Bay just kind of played that same style of allowing them to move the ball between the 20s and hoping to make that stop in the red zone. Now, when he didn't have Parsons the year prior, they were very good at these simulated pressures. They would send 4 guys, but who knew where they were coming from? Or they'd show 7 and send 5. And one of the biggest things that I was disappointed about this season was I thought by the end of the 24 season that Edgerrin Cooper looked like a guy who could be a big part of their pass rush. I remember after the Washington game, I had a guy from Philly that had me on his show and was asking me about like who the guys were in Green Bay that were going to make. And I said, Edgerrin Cooper is the one. Like, he's the guy. And if you've got a guy like that in Miami that can do something like that, I think that's something that Hafley could kind of toy with and play with a little bit. Quay Walker, who was Green Bay's linebacker a year ago, was a big part of their pass rush this past year. Not so much this year again with Parsons. I really do think they were trying to make that emphasis on getting home with 4 guys. And when they were healthy, which was kind of rare, but when they were healthy and they had Parsons and Wyatt and Rashawn Gary playing well at the beginning of the season, or Lucas Van Ness playing well before he got hurt, they were able to do that. The problem was, as some of those, like Wyatt was out for a stretch early in the season, and then he was out after Thanksgiving for the rest of the season. Van Ness got hurt sacking Joe Flacco in October and didn't basically play until early December. So that was kind of a problem. Then Rashawn Gary was a disappearing act for most of the season. That was really disappointing on that front. But I think that it'll be interesting to see just how he does those things because, with Miami's pass rush, they've got a couple guys in there that are interesting. I've mentioned Chop Robinson about 13 times. Can you tell I wanted him in Green Bay as a draft cross the year prior? But
yeah. He's interesting. You talk about Rashawn Gary. He's had an up and down career. Like Jason, first 8 games, not so good. Second 8 games, you thought he was the next coming of, Micah Parsons. In this last year, we still have high hopes for him. But, I mean, his get-off is as good as you'll see. I'm sure you do draft stuff like us. His first step, I mean, it's phenomenal.
Oh, I mean,
it's as good as you'll see. As good as Michael Parsons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and from a college standpoint, I root for the University of Michigan. So Stephen Ross is a name I'm very familiar with. He gives him a lot of money. So I mean, but Jesse Minter, yes. But the guy, like the reason that Michigan ran the ball like 35 times in a row against them in 2023 was because they could not block Chalk Robinson. Like that was one of the biggest reasons they did that. So yeah, very familiar with his work. I do think that's somebody that Hafley will circle as soon as he gets there too.
Yeah.
Real quick on that, just to say, Robinson up and down, started off very slow out of the gate, then had a really good second half of his rookie year. This year, kind of, line in the weeds, wasn't doing that much. Came in and he is advertised as a pure pass rusher. And a lot of Dolphin fans are like, well, he can't set the edge. He's not a very good run defender. This year, just have to throw in my guy. I like Keldrick Falk out of Auburn because I think he could match what Hafley likes to do and be the anti-chop and really help up against the run. New scheme. It's a new kind of situation. So I don't think Dolphin fans should look at the sack stat necessarily when they're looking at defensive linemen in this new defense. They should be looking at disrupting run defender or people that can actually help teammates get sacks. What are your thoughts about that kind of guy for Hafley in Miami now?
Yeah, that's kind of what he made Rashawn Gary, and that's what Rashawn Gary was good at when he was in college too. It was interesting when Gary was a prospect, was the knock on him was, well, if he's so good, why doesn't he have the sack production? But then you listen to Chase Winovich, Devin Bush, Don Brown, and Jim Harbaugh, and you ask them all, like, hey, who is your best player? And they'd all say Rashawn. And when Gary got to Green Bay, again, he's had a good career. This past season was not good. He did not have a sack or a tackle for loss after the October 25th game against Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he went the rest of the season and was basically silent. Some of the stuff on tape doesn't look great in terms of jogging after the quarterback and things of that nature. But when the light bulb is on for Rashawn Gary, and something Jeff Hafley has pointed out, and one thing I think will be true about this Dolphins team as a whole, run defense is not an option. You are going to play the run. Now, that doesn't always look great, but I can tell you the Packers, when Jeff Hafley was hired in the Matt LaFleur era, they ranked like 32nd in any run defense category you can name. Probably the game that is the most famous was the Raheem Mostert 487 yards in the NFC Championship game, whatever that was. Like, that was the way Matt LaFleur and his teams played defense against the run. It was just kind of an afterthought. Not so with Jeff Hafley. Like, you are going to play the run. And when they had their guys healthy, they ranked 1 at one point in the season this year. They fell they went from 1 to 3 to 5 in like consecutive weeks. They finished in the top 15, which includes a game where they got run over by Derrick Henry. So again, for the most part, I think they did a really good job. That is something though, like you said, I think that will not be something that's optional. So, with Robinson or just kind of the defensive line specifically, they will play the run and he will make you earn the right to rush the passer.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of things you said at the top, production, they get the highly athletic guy, lack of production. I think production matters in college, but again, but it's not an exact science and projection. So,
correct.
So I think too, I'm always the upside guy here. I like lotto tickets in the draft. I mentioned it. There's a few I like, but they have a type, Jacob and Jason. They got a type. I was looking up Green Bay's, their defensive line. They like them big and athletic. I think they ranked third among NFL teams in 40-yard dash time for defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen. So they like them really athletic. They second in 10-yard splits. I looked up. I mean, them and the Eagles, so that's the kind of, when we talk about interior defensive linemen, they like them big. The wide receivers, they like them over 6'1".
200 pounds.
I also noticed you guys draft offensive linemen, but who have tackle background, the athletic, short area quickness, speed at safety. I mean, they got a type. So as I was looking at all that, I was thinking, man, I kind of get where they're going, and we need size at that wide receiver position. So, Jason, you more than anybody, and you follow the draft too. This draft is loaded with size, wide receiver. It's one of the positions I like a lot in this draft. But yeah, they have a type, the Packers, right? You can almost go into it knowing, the Dolphins, we didn't have a type. It was like, oh, no, we're going to take the worst possible guy. But, Green Bay, you knew Jacob. All right, this is a Packer guy, right? That's what we want here, is to identify what is a Dolphin guy, right? So you knew going to the draft, all right, these three guys, if they're there, they're going to identify. I can mark this guy out, right?
Yeah, there's a few, so the Green Bay Draft Guide, which we do, Jacob Morley, Ross Uglum of Packer Report, and myself, we kind of help put together every year. And what it does is take some of those things, like you said, and kind of puts together what is Green Bay typically valued in the past. Now, have they gone away from that at certain times? Sure. Jaden Reed is somebody that is not a Packers type from a size standpoint. He was a little too light from that standpoint. You mentioned some of the metrics they care about. The short shuttle, the three-cone time. The three-cone time is huge for their defensive linemen. They want guys who
corners too.
Yes, and
the corners, that's a big thing. Go ahead.
Yes, so those numbers. There's a few key metrics that you can kind of find, and again, they go outside of those from time to time. Jair Alexander, for example, was a short corner that they said they bent the rules for. Randall Cobb, kind of the same thing, to go back even further on those kinds of things. But you're right. Like Zach Tom, for example, we were joking in January when they drafted him. It was like, Zach Tom's a Packer. It's just a matter of when, when do the Packers take him and kind of put him on their team. And he was one of their best offensive linemen the minute he stepped into Green Bay.
That's a sour name here, down here, because there's a lot of us that banged the table, and we took, was it Ezukama or Channing Tindo? I forget. Chat, you could probably help me out here. And I'm sticking Zach Tom, such a versatile guy, and you could just tell, especially in their Green Bay system, but in the Dolphin system, the wide zone, perfect. Oh, that name, Zach Tom. Why did you bring that one up, Jake? That still haunts me.
That's the one.
Fourth round?
Fourth round pick, yeah. And there's a bunch of guys like that. You mentioned tackle background. They thought he was going to play center when he came in, but he's been too good at tackle for them to move him. Josh Sitton, TJ Lang, David Bakhtiari, they've had a bunch of guys that they've moved all over the place and had a ton of success with from that standpoint. So that's something I think you'll see John Eric Sullivan kind of lean into as well, as finding those guys who were blind, and it's blindside protectors. So it's not often they've taken a right tackle for a right-handed quarterback. Usually it's been a guy who's a left tackle that they think they can move and kind of do some stuff like that with.
I want to ask you a question here, because we just today hired your defensive back coach. Was it Ryan Downward?
Yep.
And I think the leader in the clubhouse for the DC is Sean Duggan. Talk to me about those two guys if you know anything about them.
So Downard, everybody I've talked to, I don't see a ton of practice stuff, but everybody always says teacher first and foremost, and you can see how talented he is on that side of things. And Green Bay secondary, like 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now. So Jordan Love's first season as a starter, they had the worst safety room in the NFL. And I'm not exaggerating. It was Darnell Savage, and then like a combination of Rudy Ford, Jonathan Owens, just a bunch of guys they tossed out there, and none of them were all that successful. Yeah. I mentioned some of the stuff at the cornerback room earlier. I'll get to that in a minute. But with the safeties, then the next year it's Xavier McKinney, who, his name speaks for itself. But then there's Evan Williams, who has grown into, I think, one of the better players at that position. I'm not saying he's an all-pro or anything like that, but he's been a really good player for them as a run defender, led the team in interceptions this past year as well. And Javon Bullard is a guy who they drafted in the second round out of Georgia, who I think this year was the best player from 2024 to 2025, the player who got the most better. And I'm probably saying that really poorly. But
Georgia, yeah.
He was really good for them this year, and he's grown into like one of their leaders on the team. So that's something. And then in the secondary, I talked about the ball skills and stuff earlier, but the growth of some of these guys is worth point. Like Keyshawn Nixon, like I mentioned, when he came to Green Bay, was a dime back who played special teams. They found him as a kick returner on accident, basically during his first season in Green Bay, which was 2022. And now it's kind of a sore spot, but he is their best cover corner. Like that's probably stating what kind of a weakness that position has been, but they've had some guys go through there. And Downard's also been here forever. I think he was here when Dom Capers was here of all people. So like that's been quite some time over time. So he's been here for a really long time. I think that'll work well in Miami. Duggan, don't know too much about. He was an assistant linebacker coach to Anthony Campanelli last year. Hafley brought him to Green Bay from Boston College, and then he got promoted to linebacker coach when Campanelli went down to Jacksonville, who I'm still kind of surprised he doesn't have a head coaching gig.
Me too.
Yeah, I found him to be very impressive. But there, everybody else's loss, I guess, is going to be Jacksonville's gain on that side of things, as a team I think could be on the short list to go to the Super Bowl next season as well. But Campanelli is a guy who was really impressive with me. Duggan this year, the linebackers didn't have as good of a season as I think some Green Bay fans were hoping for. Edgerrin Cooper didn't play as well as we thought he might. Quay Walker, by the end of the season, he seemed to really hit a wall. Early in the year, Jeff Hafley said he was playing elite football and everything like that. By the end of the season, it was not going that well. And then some of the other guys on Green Bay's roster, they didn't play a ton of guys at linebacker this year. But Isaiah McDuffie, he's kind of just your old school throwback, 2-down linebacker. He'll give you what he can give you. And I think he had a okay season this year. But Duggan will be interesting. I know he's followed Hafley, so I think we're all just kind of anticipating that he ends up in Miami. It's just a matter of what's he going to be doing.
Yeah. Now, Downard's a good hire, and obviously I like the continuity with Hafley, and Rasul was there for Downard. I don't know. Was he there with Hafley? I don't know if Hafley was there.
No. So
you're right.
So Rasul came in. It was 2021. Yeah. They signed him off of the practice squad, and I think it was like his second game. He had a game-winning interception against the Cardinals. So Rasul Douglas only played like half a season that year in Green Bay, and he got all pro votes because he had 2 pick sixes. He was one of their best cover corners by the end of the season, and just like A+ dude. I'm sure you guys know this by now, having him back, but he is an A+ dude. Like a guy that when Green Bay was looking for corner help, that was the guy I was kind of banging the table for. Some of that because of the person I think that he is, but also he's a really good player. And it was a guy that when Green Bay traded him, I remember he said he cried and he thought Gutekunst was messing with him because he just couldn't believe that was something that they did by trading him to Buffalo during, it was the 23 season. Packers got off kind of a rough start that year, but they traded him to Buffalo. But I mean, if Miami can bring him back, I think that's somebody that could be a building, even if he is an older player who's not ascending, so to speak, but a guy that you could make as a building block during, this phase of their rebuild, retool, whatever it is you want to call that they're doing here in 2026.
It would be great. You have him back with Downard, and there's a couple of young DBs that you use the word teacher. So I'm hoping that Downard could really teach, your Jason Marshall Jr.'s, your Dante Trader Jr., corner and the safety right there. So liking that hire. But to flip things to, we'll keep it with another potential former Packer who might, rumor has it, be on the Dolphins short list is Malik Willis. I don't know if the Dolphins could, quote unquote, afford to bring in a potential backup or fringe starting quarterback, but let's talk about him as a person, as a player. What are your thoughts on Willis?
So I covered Malik Willis's first start in Green Bay, and all of us were just kind of like, don't know what's going to happen. So Jordan Love, they play against Philly in Brazil. Love hurts his knee on like the second to last play of the game. Willis comes in. He had just been in Green Bay for like 11 days or something silly like that when he made his first start in Green Bay. So he only threw like 10 passes. But I remember after the game, Matt LaFleur just glowing about him, saying, I don't think you guys understand how difficult of an ask it was for us to have him go in there, run our offense, make enough plays to just win against the Indianapolis Colts in that particular season. So anytime he's played well. One of my favorite quotes was from now the recently retired Tom Moore, was when Peyton Manning was their quarterback and somebody asked him, why don't you give Jim Sorgi more reps as the backup quarterback and keep the dump button? No, I'm kidding. But he says, basically, if 18 goes down, we're screwed, and we don't practice screwed. And, that was kind of how it worked in Green Bay for the longest time. If the backup quarterback, now granted, when you're replacing Aaron Rodgers, that's a tough ask for anybody. But Seneca Wallace, Brett Hundley, Scott Tolzien, they had a couple games of Matt Flynn, but that was really it. And when Malik Willis came to Green Bay, some of the stuff, like right before his first start, it was Taylor Lewan was on the radio and basically said that, I'm paraphrasing here, but that he wasn't a student of the game, like trying to insinuate he wasn't very smart or something like that. That has not been the case in Green Bay. There are some ridiculous assertions that he's better than Jordan Love, but I think that does kind of give you just an idea of how well he's played when he's been asked to play. His start against the Ravens to end the season, before the game, I wrote a story saying like, this is a huge opportunity for him. He can become, he can make a lot of money in free agency. And at the time, I think there was at least some hope that the Packers could get him on a high level backup quarterback kind of contract to keep him. But now I think he was 90% of Green Bay's offense that night from a passing and a rushing standpoint. He got injured and had to leave the game, unfortunately, but he was dynamic. He's a really good runner. He's got a strong arm. He could throw the ball all over the field. And again, I think what Matt LaFleur said after the Bears game this year, so he came in after Jordan Love got concussed against Chicago, in Chicago. He said, I think the biggest compliment I can give him is we can run our whole offense when he's in the game. And you guys have seen, when you can't run the same stuff when Quinn Ewers is in the game as opposed to when Tua Tagovailoa is in the game, just to use a Miami example.
This year's Tua, you could.
Right. But in general, if the backup quarterback comes in the game, you probably have to cut the playbook down a significant amount. And really with Green Bay's offense, Malik Willis could add to it. Like Green Bay's run game this year was not very good, but when he was in the game, it was because that defense had to account for him. And he's very fast, very mobile, very gifted arm. And from what I've been able to see, Matt LaFleur's system's not easy to learn. And he picked it up very quickly. He had those 2 starts last year it was Indianapolis and Tennessee. Then he played an extended period of time against the Jaguars and helped beat them on that given day as well. And then this year got a start against the Ravens. They didn't win, but he lit them on fire. And the previous week against Chicago, they were really good as well. He would have been like the story of the game had Green Bay recovered an onside kick, just to be able to kind of do those things. So I would say, I don't know what the salary cap situation is in Miami. I'm sure with them paying Tua a bunch of money like the way that they have, but if they can afford him, I think Miami is one of those places that Willis could go because he's going to be able to pick his spot to where he's not a bridge quarterback. I'm not going to the Raiders where I'm just a placeholder for Fernando Mendoza. I'm not going to Minnesota where I'm competing for the job, but they really want JJ McCarthy to win that job because he was a former first-round pick. In Miami, they don't want Tua Tagovailoa to win that job, and they don't really care about the other quarterbacks on the roster because they didn't invest that much in him. So with Willis, and I think with A-Chain and Jalen Waddle and some of these guys that they have down in Miami, I don't know. Tyreek's not going to be back, right? No. Okay, so not
Waddle,
him, but
A-Chain, that's basically
but still, that group, the running game alone with A-Chain and Willis could be number 1 in the NFL next season, and I'm not excited.
Jacob. Getting me excited. Yeah.
I am excited. Real quick follow-up on Malik. Now, he might have a number of different choices, and obviously the money may come a little bit higher in some other places. But do you think Malik, and your coverage of him, is the type of guy to follow Sully and Hafley and say, you know what, I'm going to give a new home discount to the Dolphins and my old bosses?
Yeah, it depends on what the discount is, because the reality is, like in Ndamukong Suh, when he signed with the Dolphins, most famously said, "Oh no, I just went with who offered me the most money," which
and that's most cases. Guy,
Suh's not a popular guy in Green Bay for so many reasons, but like kudos, I appreciate the honesty at least from that standpoint. But I don't know if he would take a discount, but I do think that what Miami can offer might offset if Minnesota were to offer more money, or who did I mean? The Raiders or some of those teams that are.
I think the Browns are another one that could compete.
The Browns could be.
They got to open. I mean, how the heck?
I don't wish about
Shedeur Sanders.
I don't wish that on. I don't wish the Browns or the Jets on anybody.
Anybody else like double take when they saw Shedeur Sanders was invited to the Pro Bowl game? Just X the damn thing out already. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm with you. But I to finish the question, I do think that could be a talking point for him to come to Miami for a couple $1,000,000 less instead of another place where, again, he's a placeholder, versus in Miami, he's going to have the runway to be the franchise quarterback. I think even if it is just for, one season, if it doesn't work out, they could draft a guy next year. But I think that would be, I think that's going to be his biggest selling point at this point, because with the draft class being the way that it is, there's no certain, we don't know who the number 2 quarterback is going to be behind Mendoza. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of places where he's just a placeholder. So that's something I think he's going to value quite a bit. That could be another one, could be a different Green Bay connection, but Mike McCarthy in Pittsburgh, even though those two didn't intersect while he was here, obviously. But Pittsburgh doesn't have a quarterback. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to stay in Pittsburgh just because they hired McCarthy. So, but he's going to have his options, and he deserves them, because honestly, if you see where the way I put it was when Green Bay traded for him at the end of training camp, not this past season, but the year before. And had Green Bay not done that, they traded a conditional 7th to get him. Had they not done that, Tennessee was probably going to cut him. And then he would have ended up on a practice squad, and his career, frankly, could have been in the dumpster. Like, it's over. So he took that one start 11 days later and basically changed his entire career for what he's been. I think it's one of the best stories in the NFL, that had Green Bay made the playoffs and made like a deep run or something like that, it wouldn't have been like the front page, because that would have been Jordan Love and stuff like that. But it would have been one of those stories that, like, hey, it's a slow Tuesday. Here's this really good feature on Green Bay's backup that kind of helps make those kinds of things. And maybe he'll get that opportunity in the spring after he signs wherever it is he ends up. But I think whoever gets him is very fortunate that they will be.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah. I was a huge, I got a lot of heat for it, but I was a huge Malik Willis fan coming out of Liberty. I just thought that the arm, the dual threat ability, the playmaking, and I'm glad to see he's finally getting there. When we look at the money, I'm thinking realistically, are we looking at a Justin Fields type deal?
That's the comparison I've made. Maybe a 3-year deal for, if Miami wants him, maybe they have to give him a little bit longer of a contract just to spread that money out a little bit more. But I think he's better than Justin Fields has ever shown to be. But that I think is a fair, like the Justin Fields contract with the Jets was you're our starter, but we're not full blown committed to you like, Green Bay is to Jordan Love, just for example. We're not giving you franchise quarterback money. You have a chance to earn that, but we're not doing that right now. I do think, maybe a little bit more money for inflation purposes and just kind of going that and maybe a little longer, like I said, to spread some of that money out.
That's the question. Is the money, because I think Tua will not be here, and Jason and I will get into that with the new coordinator. But the money, but you can find ways. But the other thing is what I like about the situation. I hope that Sully brings this here is take chances on quarterback. The one thing we should learn here is it's not a linear progress on quarterbacks. You got to invest in all routes, draft, free agency, trade, and we haven't done that all. We've been. Bring a guy in. Who cares the Dolphins have always been scared, allergic to competition in the quarterback room, and that's something I like in Green Bay is they foster competition, and that word came out so much in the press conference. So I'm really excited about that. I hope they bring that here because they're scratch out tickets these quarterbacks. But if you don't buy any, you're never going to win.
And go back to Ron Wolf. Like when they had Favre, Mark Brunell, Aaron Brooks, Matt Hasselbeck, like all those guys. And those were guys they drafted not to be the starter, right? Those were guys they wanted to develop and eventually trade for draft capital, or he becomes a high-level backup. They kind of got away from that, especially at the end of Aaron Rodgers' tenure. But still, Brett Hundley was a guy who, for a backup quarterback, ended up forging out a pretty nice career as a fifth-round pick. I think that's something Green Bay will get back to at some point here, probably as soon as this year, because Malik's not going to be back. So that's something you got to find. And like you said, there's no more precious commodity in the NFL than quarterback play. And sometimes you think like Brock Purdy was a dart throw at the end of the draft, and they could have picked anybody else. And they were fortunate in San Francisco that he's turned into what he's turned into. But how many times have you seen a team just flat run out of quarterbacks at the end of, a lot of them do, that's just kind of the reality. There's 32 teams in the NFL. There's not 32 good quarterbacks in the NFL. So anytime you can pick a guy who I think could be, something in this league, developing those guys, fostering those guys, I think that's a big deal and something that a lot of good teams certainly do, because as soon as the wrong quarterback is in the game, I watched Clayton Tune, for example, in the final regular season game of the year for Green Bay against Minnesota, and he didn't have a chance. And that was due to some of the stuff around him, but he's not an NFL quarterback. If you don't have one, you don't have a chance at all.
We've seen plenty of that. Trust me, plenty of that.
Right. Yeah, Tua's probably the best one since Dan Marino. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, you could argue for that. Whether it's Tannehill, Chad Pennington.
Yeah. To be fair, you said darts. I said scratch off tickets. We don't throw darts, or we didn't buy scratch off tickets. You know what I mean? So that's the thing we've been preaching here is you got to take shots. And there's a quarterback that I want to mention that I want to take a shot on this offseason, not in the draft, but in trade. And I'll have a trade scenario coming. That's Anthony Richardson. That's a kind of scratch off ticket. When I see the regime do something like that, I know we got the right regime because it's different, and it's something that we've been preaching. It's 60% of this whole damn thing is the quarterback. 40% the rest. That's the first job. Yes, you can build a great team, but look at Brock Purdy. There's a ceiling there. Every single time they build a roster, but it takes so much. Everything has to go so much correctly for them to win, and it's just very hard. So I don't think that's the way to build it. It's the quarterback, and you got to take shots. And that's the one beautiful thing that he said during his press conference was, we're going to draft the quarterback. If not, to varying degrees. I don't want people to think you're going to draft the quarterback in the first round every year, but to varying degrees, we're going to take a shot either every year or every other year. So that's what I'm excited about. And I was looking at Malik's stats. Last year in 2024, he played 2 games started, played in 7 total. I imagine some of that was mop-up duty. 74% completion percentage. This last year, played that 1 start you mentioned, played in other few games in mop-up, but 85% completion percentage. The efficiency, man. Quickly on him, what did you learn about him in the locker room or dealing with him, interviewing him about the guy? What are the whispers about him what happened here? How did we get here? Because he played at an efficient level, albeit in a small dose. But, man, this was a 360 turnaround. Have you dealt with him one-on-one? How is the person, Malik Willis?
He's a pro's pro. Not to be a complete cliche on that, but it's always every backup always says I'm preparing like I'm the starter, but he is preparing like he's the starter. Very humble about his situation that he was in. You guys are going to hear him. He is the man of faith who mentions God after every other sentence, which, more power to him on that side of things, but he's very staunch in his faith and what he believes in. And I think that's where his humility comes from. I remember after that start against the Ravens, where again, between the two teams, he was the best player on the field, other than maybe Derrick Henry that particular night. And that is a field that included some very, very good players between the Packers and the Ravens roster. But he just said, he prepared for this. He was blessed for this. He doesn't lean on his own understanding, was the phrase he continued to use. But every time he talks, it is a guy who he's not going to go to the podium and say guys need to start showing up for meetings and then be late to a meeting the following week. Just to maybe an example that you guys might be familiar with on this particular front. But I think that being the quarterback of a team is something that a lot of people don't understand what comes with. It's like you're the CEO of the team, the face of the franchise, to use that term. That's something Jordan Love took very seriously when he took the keys from Aaron Rodgers. It's something Rodgers was certainly very proud of when he was as well. And Malik Willis hasn't ever been that because in Tennessee, I don't think he was ever like the fully anointed starter. We believe in this guy. This is our quarterback. But he's somebody who every week when he goes to, you're going to be very proud that he's representing your team's organization, wherever it is that he ends up. But he's from everything I know about him, he's a very good man. And I think he's somebody that can certainly get guys to rally around. I think, the production itself speaks for being able to get guys to rally around him, because it's very easy if you're a receiver to have a backup quarterback come in the game and just kind of slump your shoulders and be like, well, forget this. So never been something that's been a problem with Malik Willis. I think he's a guy who you'd be proud to have as the face of your franchise.
And again, the one thing we need to learn is don't give up on guys. Situations matter. Sam Darnold's a perfect example. It's not a linear thing. Situations do matter, and maybe he found a way, and it's going to be a similar system, right? Like, it's the Shanahan tree, all these guys. So if I had to say you're a betting man here, give me a prediction. Is Malik Willis donning a Miami Dolphins jersey? What is he, number 2 this offseason?
Yeah, I would be shocked if he's not. Just that's the – granted, I don't talk to Brian Gutekunst every day, and I'm not texting John Eric Sullivan as we speak here. But
go ahead and do it if you want to right now.
If I could, I would. But if I could, I would, and I'd let you guys know. But I just think the familiarity there is a big selling point for him. I think he's going to value, like you said, the situation after the way everything went in Tennessee. And I think that's something that he may, talk to his agent about. And I believe he has the same agent as Jordan Love, who's also the same agent as like Micah Parsons. So he's a big time agent in the game, but he's been very good about getting his players in those right spots, which was a big reason Parsons is in Green Bay, just for example. That, and God bless Jerry Jones. But I think that the situation in Miami, between the guys I just mentioned there for him, guys there that he knows and trusts, guys that aren't going to sell him a bill of goods. I understand the NFL is a business, but they're not going to sign him and then find his replacement immediately to where, like, hey, I could have signed elsewhere where I was the unquestioned starter. I know it's a big boy business and everything like that, but I think Malik Willis is going to value that situation, that familiar, and he could trust those two guys. I think you guys have seen with Sullivan and Hafley is they're both very genuine. So I don't think they would tell him, we'll do this and then do something else.
They came off fantastic.
Jacob, this is really great stuff. Appreciate you, man. Obviously, everyone in the chat, appreciate everyone watching. I think you've done a really good job of making us a little bit more excited. Since this last 3 weeks has been a little bit of a roller coaster for Dolphin fans, not knowing exactly what to think. It's been very positive, and I think you're doing a great job of getting maximum positivity now. Let's do a little bit more positivity.
Let's do some more
on some other potential free agents. You told George and I a name before we went live that I've already been very intrigued about. If there's one or two other free agents from the Packers that the Dolphins might get their hands on, what do you think?
So Quay Walker is the linebacker that we mentioned. I mentioned him in the pre-show and then during everything we've been talking about here. But it's a guy who Hafley has gone out of his way to compliment when he's been given an opportunity. I remember his first press conference as the Packers defensive coordinator. We asked about him, and he was just like, we're going to put him in position to make a lot of plays. And Walker, actually, last year, there was a stretch. He had a really bad game against Chicago. And then his next two games were against Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel. And those are two coaches that their sole purpose in life is to take a linebacker and put them in a blender. And Walker responded with two of the best games of his career. Hafley was thrilled about some stuff like that. He has been up and down. The athletic traits have not necessarily translated to the field. Yes, he did push the team doctor from Detroit. That was his rookie season. He's since apologized for it 1,000 times over. There's never been a problem with Walker from that standpoint. Since then, I do think that he's going to be on his way out of Green Bay. It sounded like he was going to get a contract early in the season, and then they stopped talking about it. And somebody asked, when's the last time you talked about a contract? And it had been a while. And then his exit comments after the game against Chicago were kind of interesting and just not stuff people say if they think they're going to be around in Green Bay for a while. So that's one for Hafley to kind of put his defense around. That could be something that they want to do he was the green dot in Green Bay as well. So that could shorten the learning curve for the rest of everyone else. The other one was Romeo Doubs.
That's going to be expensive, though, boy. That's going to be expensive.
I don't know. I don't know. I know in the offseason he asked for the Khalil Shakir contract. And I don't have those numbers in front of me, but that was relatively, for a receiver, relatively inexpensive. And I think that he's somebody who, the way Green Bay kind of built their offense was they wanted each of their receivers to kind of complement each other in certain ways. So Christian Watson is he can kind of do it all for him, but he takes their deep off the top off the defense. Dobbs was a intermediate contested catch, quick slants, red zone threat. He was really good in the red zone. Jordan Love had a lot of trust in him. if the Packers had won that game against Chicago a few weeks ago, we were talking about a huge game. Romeo Doubs has 200-yard games in his career. They're both in the playoffs. The big win against Dallas a few years ago and then a couple weeks ago against Chicago. But I think he's somebody who fits in well with Jalen Waddle, because Waddle's going to be your home run hitter and kind of do some of that stuff. But Doubs can just be, it's 3rd and 7. Can we get 7 yards? I think Doubs is good at stuff like that. He's kind of the good at everything, but not necessarily great at anything. He's somebody that I think will be appreciated more in Green Bay once he's gone. The reality in Green Bay just is they extended Christian Watson last year. That was a 1-year deal. They probably want to do another extension for him this year. He had a really good year once he came back from his ACL. Tucker Kraft is their starting tight end who was ascending to stardom before he tore his ACL this past year. It was such a bummer. Like you could hear a pin drop in the stadium when it happened.
I was huge on Kraft for the Dolphins. Drafted him on every freaking fantasy team this year, of course. But anyway,
legitimate psychopath at tight end, and one of the leaders of that locker room as well. But
they're going to want a tight end draft. I don't know why we didn't take one. You know,
I don't either. But now that you said that, I didn't realize they had one. I don't know why you didn't either. But he's going to be somebody who they're going to want to give an extension to, I would imagine. And then Jaden Reed is another player who he's entering the final year of his contract as well. So at some point, there's only so many guys you can pay. Yeah. And I think Doubs of that group, and they drafted Matthew Golden in the 1st round. They drafted Savion Williams in the 3rd round. Like you didn't do that. You didn't do that to extend Watson and Doubs from that standpoint. I saw somebody ask about his injury history. The only real scary thing was he's had 2 concussions in his career. And one of them was in Philadelphia where he was like laying on his face and they had to flip him over onto his back. It was kind of it was in the playoffs last year. It was kind of a scary scene for everybody, but otherwise injury hasn't been a big deal. There was one incident where he got suspended for conduct detrimental to the team after he kind of went AWOL during the week, but everything I've heard since then is that's water under the bridge. He kind of grew from that. So I think Doubs would be a really good addition in Miami.
And you got a couple offensive linemen. We're one Sean Ryan. Is it Rayhan? Sean Rayhan?
Ryan.
Played a lot of guard for you guys. The last 7 games, I think he started guard.
He started at center at the end of the year.
Center, guard center. He's a guy they're looking to bring back because he's somebody I could see the Dolphins bringing in. More of a depth piece.
Yeah, I don't know. So the thing about Green Bay that's interesting is their starting center this year was Elton Jenkins, and then Jenkins broke his leg, and they can save like $20 million against the cap, and they do have some cap constraints coming up with the Jordan Love contract, Micah Parsons contract, and all those guys I just mentioned they need to pay. So I'm interested to see what it is they'll have to do on that. So Jenkins, I'm sure, gets released. Maybe they try and bring him back. I don't know. The way when he got injured, they talked about it like he wasn't going to be back. But when Ryan stepped in, he was actually a better player just this season in that stretch than Jenkins was for them. I don't know if they want to bring him back. Anytime Ryan has been in position to be a starter, they've made him compete. They've made him rotate. They've made him do all kinds. They benched him before to the point where Ryan even said at some point this year, I'll do whatever they tell me to, but at some point, don't I have a job, kind of thing. Don't I have a job? Or they're always looking to replace me kind of thing. So I'll be interested to see what they do with him. I think that if I were Green Bay, I would want a veteran center just because you're in this window of trying to win a championship. And I don't want to start over it. I think that's one of the mistakes, frankly, that the Lions made this coming season was when they went with Tate Ratledge right in the middle of their offensive line. And that was something that took them a while to kind of get up to speed. And then, they had the whole thing with Frank Ragnow, which was interesting. So if I were Green Bay, I'd want a center to come back. I think if Miami needs a center, I think that Ryan actually showed to play better there than he did at guard. Some conditioning questions during his career in Green Bay. How much, credence there is to that, I don't know. I also know offensive linemen are expensive. You don't even have to be that good, and you'll make 10, 15 million bucks. Who was the guy for Pittsburgh lad? Dan Moore or somebody? There's a bunch of guys. Jawan Taylor. There's a bunch of guys who have been not very good and made a lot of money.
Oh yeah, injured. Are we done with those players? Yeah, Dolphins have a history. What's the name of the offensive lineman we signed last year? Jason, who got hurt, who played for Pittsburgh.
Connor Williams.
Huh?
Oh,
James Ennis.
Yeah, James Ennis. Yeah. The list goes on.
Chicago Bear at one point.
Yeah, Chicago. Yeah, Bear, Steelers. He basically came here on vacation and did. But yeah, there's
played
a lot
4
of
snaps.
4 snaps.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
He played a couple snaps and got hurt against the Colts, and that was it.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, Jacob, you gave us a ton. First of all, chat. Everybody in the chat's active. Thank you guys so much. St. Michael, Chris, Scotty, everybody. Make sure you guys please hit that little thumbs up. It takes a second to help support the channel here. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel. We got a lot of Dolphins, obviously, draft stuff, everything. We're going to have you covered wall to wall. We appreciate it. Jacob, we said we'd have you on for 30 minutes. It's been an hour. Jason and I are going to now move on to the Dolphins OC. You can stick around if you want, but I'm sure you got other things to do. We're going to now get into some Dolphins hires. Jacob, before we let you go, where can people find you and find your work?
Yeah, so Twitter, X, whatever it is they're calling it these days, I'm at Jacob Westendorf there. Packers on SI, Pro Football Network, some stuff there, not too much there. Baylor on SI, I'm doing some stuff for their basketball team. And then I just had, if you guys want to check out a draft story, I just did for Maize and Blue Review, Michigan's On3 Rivals website. I interviewed Jimmy Rolder, who's a linebacker who probably a late day 2, early day 3 pick, just kind of talking about his career at Michigan. But a lot of it is Packers, and that's kind of where I've been for the last 3 years. So we'll get into the draft. And if you guys want a draft guide, it's centered toward Green Bay, but with Miami hiring a Green Bay general manager, I think those are things we'll set out a pre-order date here soon. And if you guys do a pre-order, then you guys can get it for, cheaper than what it'll be closer to the draft. And you'll kind of know as you get closer, just, from a tendency standpoint, at least, what kind of players might the Dolphins like.
Yeah. I'll be honest, you got me hyped up for Malik, for Sully, Hafley, and all these guys. Jacob, man, let's do it again.
You guys will have to come up to Green Bay when they come to Lambeau next year.
That's a football bucket list. To watch a game in Green Bay would be a dream.
But yeah, we appreciate all the insight you gave us, man. From Willis to Hafley to Sullivan. Thanks so much, everybody. Check out his stuff. We're not going anywhere yet, but we're going to send Jacob out. Jacob, thank you so much. We appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining us. It was fantastic.
Appreciate you, fellas. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Thank you, Jacob. Have a great one. Be well.
Man, that was
awesome.
I'm hyped. Dolphin fans in the chat, you got to be hyped for what he said about all these things.
That was great.
Malik couldn't talk highly enough. Hafley, Sullivan, the way he talked glowingly about Hafley, man, I'm excited. And
Teacher. I like that with both Hafley and with Doward. Teacher. I like that. Doward.
I want to go back to the Malik Willis stuff because we have the connection. Hafley did mention he worked closely with Willis as a scout team quarterback, so that raised the red flag. They've seen the growth up close, not just physically, not just mentally, but professionally, like Jacob said. And when a player's written off early and he kind of they have a firsthand evaluation of what he did to overcome that and how much he's grown, that's huge. I said I was a big fan of Willis coming out. In his brief appearance over the last 2 seasons, man, I'm telling you, he's looked excellent. You can hear it in the voice of Jacob. He's really changed as a quarterback. Calmer. He was more decisive in a little bit of playing time. I love them coming out, Jason. The tools are always there. Big arm, dual threat ability, natural playmaker. And I think the game just slowed down for him. So, look, the money's going to be an issue. He talked about that Fields contract. Will he take a little bit less to come here, knowing he's seen what it looks like in a bad situation, coming here to guys he knows might save a couple million. But I think bringing Willis in, either it's a bridge quarterback or an upside swing. But, if he tops out as just a solid stopgap, Jason, that still has value. But if he continues to grow and ascend, you might have found a quarterback without spending premium draft capital or massive money. And I said, you got to take shots. So look at Sam Darnold, his resurgence. And like I said, it's a reminder, quarterback development isn't always linear. The lesson is simple. Every avenue should be addressed at the quarterback position. The Dolphins have not done that enough. They've been allergic to it. Trade, draft, free agency. Don't rule anything out. It doesn't work. So I'm excited about that. Are you excited at the potential? What are your thoughts? And the money work, kind of, how do you feel comfortable with that? What would you like? Would you be excited to bring Malik down here?
The Dolphins have a lot of work to do, as does Sully with trimming that cap down. Let's see what happens with Tyreek and Tua. Let's see what happens if there's any – look, there's not many trades that are going to drastically help the cap that makes sense. And might get compensation that's semi-decent. There's a lot of financial work and almost headaches to get rid of. So let's see how that happens in March, like right before everything really, really, happens. So I like the thought of a good priced contract for Malik to compete with Ewers, and then a day 2 or day 3 quarterback drafted, use one of those thirds, or maybe, a guy a little bit later who's more of like a flyer. And, you got to build a room because Darnold is gone. Obviously, Tua is probably out. It's Quinn Ewers right now, and you got to use, as you said, the avenues to add to that room. So I would say let's hope for a semi hometown discount, if you can kind of call it that. Now, I also heard
that 13 for 15 for Malik. I knew that.
Sure. I don't think he's getting $30 million somewhere, sure. But if a team comes in at 17, 19 mil, I don't know that the Dolphins could do that. So hopefully it could be a little bit of that discounted price. Obviously, everyone knows about why it's economically sound to sign a contract in Florida. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. But I would welcome it. it.
I just like taking it. And it doesn't stop with Malik. You know me. I'm banging the table here. Let's. This doesn't look like the draft to take a high in the top 50 or top 2 rounds to take a quarterback. Doesn't look like it. Even though I'm doing Ty Simpson work, and I'm gonna actually probably drop a short Ty Simpson video scouting report. I might heads up. I don't know yet, but it might happen this weekend. I like him a lot what I've seen, but I'm telling you, Anthony Richardson. I've been banging this drum. I see people now following up on that. Jason, I was the first one out there banging it. Ceiling swing, high risk. The traits, the athleticism are rare stuff. Durability, consistency are questions. Can he stay healthy? Can he ever put it together? And look, the odds are he probably doesn't more than he had. The odds are he probably doesn't put it together. It's probably a better chance. But if you wouldn't get this kind of guy who's a top 5 pick in the draft a few years ago, if he didn't have these issues. How did they get Malik Willis? They went out and they said, we see a guy with big upside that we can bring in our situation, and they're not getting the most out of him. He's in a bad spot. We can do it. I think it's similar to Richardson. Now, you say, what do you give up? It's a day 3 pick, right? But I think you can also take a team. I mentioned this, Tua Tagovailoa. You take Tua's contract. Look, you're still going to have to eat the dead money regardless you trade him or not. I think it's less if you do a post-junior trade. But, you eat most of the salary. I don't know what his salary is. You eat, say, minus $5 million of it. You eat the rest of it. But you give a 5th-round pick, or if you want to eat less money, maybe give a 4th, and you get Richardson back, who I think is making 5 or 10
million. He's like 10 million.
Yeah. So it's not bad. You know what I mean? That's what a backup costs. But you're getting an upside swing. He's one I like. And we'll talk about I'm going to give you another name. We'll talk about Slowick, the hire next. Davis Mills. Slowick, he was there when Bobby Slowick was there. More of a floor play, more of a bridge option, but I don't like it as much, but he can operate the offense. He can make the throws. He's got some ability. You're not chasing as much upside here. You're buying a little more stability. I think he should have probably came in that game second half for C.J. Stroud. He has value at the right price. Another guy, this might be a little wild, is Jalen Milroe. Where's Jalen Milroe going to be there with Darnold? You look at these former Green Bay executives, John Snyder, they take the shots. I wanted to take a shot on Milroe last year, right? He's another guy, big upside, big arm, still roll. He's more of a long-term project, but these are the lotto tickets. These are the darts. What are your thoughts on some of these options? What do you like the best there?
If I have to rank them, I'll say Malik. I'm intrigued with the potential. You threw out that trade, sending Tua to Indy, eat some of the money, bring back AR. That's not the worst thing in the world. Davis Mills is intriguing with the Slowick connection. Another thing about Slowick that I like to connect the dots with, obviously his time in Miami, we know that, but he was able to maximize the skill of a 3rd-year wide receiver in Nico Collins, who had very pedestrian numbers and performances his first 2 seasons, and they basically tripled his output in Slowick's first year. And that's a 6'4" wide receiver who was drafted in the middle rounds. And that's what I'm talking about here for this year, is to find, a 6'3", 6'4", tall wide receiver that Slowick could have some fun with, because, you're going to need to complement Jalen Waddle with more than just speed. You need size, but that makes sense to kick the tires on Davis Mills in Miami. So let's make him a third in that name. But you can't get two of those guys. I don't think you could sign Malik and trade for, because now you have a lot of money tied up in non-starting, or at least one non-starting quarterback. So there's options. There's options, but we're going to see how good Sully is on the economics of this thing real soon. So I'm curious about that.
There's options. I'd bring in both. I'd revamp the whole room. All right, so I go. What about Will Levis? Another name again. These are.
I'm out now.
Sam Howell, I'm out on, but okay, if it's cost nothing, these are the type of things that we haven't been doing. I get it, but you never know, right? We didn't think Sam Darnold would be sitting at the Super Bowl. We didn't think Malik Willis would be getting a $15 million contract, this offseason. So you just never know. I agree with you on Levis. I prefer Anthony Richardson, but it's interesting.
I mean, let's also give a little credit to Cam Miller, who is an absolute $1 lottery ticket. But brought on, he is going to be in that room, whether it's a practice squad scenario, whether he fights for a number 3. So let's not write him off just yet. We'll see what happens with him too.
All right, so let's go on to the coaching stuff. So we'll start with we hired a bunch of coaches. Let's start with the OC. Let's start with Bobby Slowick. Here's my thing. At first, Jason, I'll start off here. I was feeling a little not sure, right? Because I was hoping for like a total reset, not someone who's been in the building on the coaching staff. Kind of felt like a sideways move, but I read that he put a lot of thought in it. It would have been Stenovich, the Green Bay guy, if it wasn't Slowick. So it tells me a lot that he evaluated the situation and went with the guy, not with the guy he knew, but the guy that was inside this building already. So he must have really thought highly of him. I do think he deserves some credit for the CJ Stroud stuff, but he shouldn't get all of it, because to me, the biggest factor with Stroud is I was never a Stroud guy. I think the league just caught on to him. By year 2, defenses had plenty of film. They started throwing more complex looks at him. I think just the honeymoon ended. And honestly, I told you, I never bought into the Stroud hype. Now, he deserves some credit. That doesn't mean Slowick doesn't deserve credit. I was genuinely surprised when the Texans let him go. So that scheme-wise, here's another positive. You're sticking, well, some people might look at a positive or negative, but you're sticking with the Kyle Shanahan West Coast Foundation. That'll help guys like Brewer, right? You're worried about a Brewer in another power gap system. Would he fit? A-chain? They don't have to make major adjustments. I'm not over the moon hard about it, but I don't hate it. I'll let it play out. I trust Hafley and Sullivan. I'm going to believe in it, and I'm going to let it play out. I think it's really good news, though, for Quinn Ewers, if that's the direction you go. Your thoughts on Bobby Slowick, new OC?
I like it for a couple of different reasons, a number of different reasons, and they're all a little different. I like the fact that the Dolphins have some sort of a continuity with this, keeping him and promoting him. That's good. He's only had a year in Miami, I get that, but he does have what I mentioned about his time in Houston. I like that. He does have that Kyle Shanahan passing game coordination. Remember, Mike McDaniel was a run game coordinator. That was his bag. And as good as it was at times, there were some areas that didn't make sense in certain situations, area of the field, down, distance, what have you. And of course, too many screens, too many passes behind the line of scrimmage. I got a movie reference, George. I know you like when I do my movies reference. Yes, one of my favorite recent movies is Ford versus Ferrari. And if you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. But part of what is great about that movie is, you got a race car. But what's important about the race car, no matter how fast it goes, is who's driving the car. Sometimes a driver has to know the machine in and out better than anyone to get the most mileage, no pun intended, and the most efficiency out of the car. So now that Bobby Slowick is going to be the offensive coordinator and play caller, he's driving the Mustang right now. He's driving his own car, and he's going to make the downshifts, the upshifts. He's going to turn when and where he wants. It's his car that he is driving right now. So I'm not.
Better find the pilot. You better find the driver, though. You know
No, he's driving it. No, he's driving the car. You know what I mean? And he's also doing all the ins and outs with it. So this is not a hit on Mike McDaniel at all. This is a different kind of driver. Let's see if he maximizes, whether it's Quinn Ewers, whether it's Malik Willis, whether it's a rookie, whether it's someone that we haven't named, what have you. Let's see what new weapons are brought in. Let's see who else is getting. All right, well, 7,000 RPMs, man. 7,000 RPMs. But
by the way, interesting name there, Scummy. I like Sawyer Robinson as a late round option. A lot of talent. I like the kid a lot. So we're gonna get into more draft stuff. You know that, Jason. You're making me feel. I'm not. It's story of my life. Sometimes I make people feel great. At the same time, someone next to the person feels like shit.
You
make me feel great, son.
It is what it is, St. Michael. It is what it is. But
you make me feel great.
Hopefully, if I can make one person feel better about the situation, I've done my job.
That's me.
And I've done my job tonight.
You've done your job.
But I like Slowick staying and getting promoted. It's a welcome scenario for what the Dolphins have not done with some of their assistant coaches and coordinators. So I like this.
Yeah, and look, I'm putting my trust in these new guys. I wasn't over the moon about it, but I'm not going to judge it. Let's see how it plays out. There is some positives with Slowick. I do like some of the stuff he did with Stroud and, like you said, in the offense. I was surprised they let him go. It's a wait and see for me. I don't hate it, but I'm going to put my trust in these guys. But let's talk about some other. Shout out to the chat, St. Michael, everybody, make sure you're giving a thumbs up for Jason Sarney. Make him feel good. Make me feel good. Thumbs up to the channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We appreciate it. So let's round it up here with some of the other new hires they hired. We talked about Ryan Downward today, the new DB coach they got from Green Bay. We talked with our guest, Jason Westendorf from Packers on his side. He joined the Packers as a defensive qualities assistant under Mike McCarthy, who just got hired by the Steelers. That was a shocker to me. Not a Steelers way type coach. But in 2018, he was retained by Matt LaFleur, promoted to defensive backs coach in 19, and then later promoted to safeties coach in 22, and he's been the defensive back coach. So he'll take over from Matt Arroyo, a guy I was a big fan of, who went to you go to the Jaguars, right? Matthew Arroyo.
I believe so.
Yeah, with your guy, Campanelli. Downward, and then Ty Tolbert, the veteran wide receivers coach, worked with a bunch of big receivers. I mean, and the one thing you'll notice here is the veteran presence on the coaching staff that I like. Ty Tolbert, receivers coach for over 30 years with multiple franchises, Broncos, Giants, Bears, a bunch of guys, Demaryius Thomas, Beckham. I mean, a bunch of receivers. I'm forgetting all the names, but him and then Chris Tabbert, new special team coach. He was the 20 years of coaching experience on special teams with the Bills last year, I think, right? Tabbert. Your thoughts on those three hires? And what do you like? You like the veterans kind of experience there?
My favorite one is Downard, especially with what Jacob was saying, that he's a teacher, especially with the fact that there are young corners. And maybe you keep Rasul Douglas because of that. So that would be great. I definitely think they need to draft a young corner with their top 5 picks. They got 5 picks in the top 90. I would guarantee that a defensive back is among that top 5. I wouldn't hate if it's a cornerback and a safety. So the Downard hire is nice to bring him back working under Hafley. Tolbert, you said it, big wide receivers. So that's music to my ears that the Dolphins need to revamp that room. To me, your only viable ones right now are Jalen Waddle and Malik Washington. And Malik Washington has to be used properly. Okay. Now he's a small wide receiver who does not like to go down and get tackled by the first hit. He also could really be a phenomenal route-winning receiver if you bring him downfield, right? So don't throw to him 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, which was often, if you look at his route tree. Get him in space. Get him, working out of the slot. Move him around. Get him downfield. So also, I think it's mandatory, as everyone knows, that you need a wide receiver drafted in the top 3 or 4 picks. So, happy with that. NWI do not want back Robert Thomason, but there was time together in Tennessee, but different player. I mean, I cannot believe how much of a failure it was with NWI in Miami this year. But I think that these are good hires. They're quick hires. So this crew of Sullivan and Hafley, mainly Hafley in this case, they want to do this quick and get people in the room together and start planning and start knowing what players they're going to bring in and how they're going to keep current or potential free agents to stick around in Miami. So I'm excited. I like the Downard hire. I thought that was probably the best of the three. But, I'm going to trust these Green Bay guys until there's evidence to not trust them anymore.
That's where I'm at. I like the way their presence. I like the way they speak. I like the things they say. You said, I'm going to put my trust. I'll put it to you this way. It's as confident as I felt, because when's the last time we had two new guys coming on the same timeline that are actually brothers or friends? I know we hated that fact. Some people, not me, but hated the fact when they hired him. But that means something. To me,
I think it's great. I mean,
they're going to sink or swing. They're going to hold up the Lombardi or be fighting 4 years together. Right?
This is not a situation, George, where it's like, all right, Sullivan hired his buddy. Yeah. Sullivan put his name on the line for hiring a guy, not because he knows him, but just how much confidence he has working with him. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you make your first major hire just because you're friends with someone? There has to be some.
This is not a charity case. He's putting his job on the line. He knows why he's bringing in is on. I don't see any back. I mean, you never know with jobs, but I don't see any backstabbing with these two guys. So I kind of like that. And shout out to Scotty who said Hood in the second. Man, I'll tell you, you like Hood, the Tennessee corner. His teammate. If take the injuries aside, Jermon McCoy. To me, injuries aside, he's the number one corner in this draft. Now, Delaney.
I like Mansour Delane. I'm going with Delane as my number one.
I love Delaney. I love Delaney too, and I'll hold off until we get into hardcore tape of it. But boy, McCoy, without the ACL stuff, his 2024 tape was phenomenal. And can we just talk real quick about Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft, because it seemed like draft season kicks off. Boy, if that scenario happens,
no chance
that 11
against Caleb Downs is lasting that long. No chance.
Yeah, but if it does, safeties fall. Shout out to Sammy. There's a lot of work to do on these teams with 30 free agents. Yeah, very true. Shout out to Sammy in the house. But yeah, so what I'm saying is, Sarni, is if Caleb Downs is there at 11, he's a safety. Remember, nobody thought Minka Fitzpatrick would get there. But boy, I'm telling you, what a way to start if that happens. Daniel Jeremy, we're gonna be doing some mock drafts too. Sonny, right? On the War Room.
Shocked. I would be shocked if Downs. I mean, if Downs is there at 11, you run the ticket up.
Not run. I'm taking a flight. I'll do some pretty. I'd take a bet if he's there on live stream when we're live on the draft. If he's there at number 11, because
I'll give you a second round cornerback, ball hawk for San Diego State, Chris Johnson.
Oh, I like him.
Okay, so I know these top 2 or 3 names, but if they go into the second round and want to address cornerback, Chris Johnson.
Look, stay tuned with us because we have the Finn's Faithful War Room. We got a ton of stuff coming up on that. Guest, and not only we'll do mock drafts. I'm rolling out the prospects. I've been getting into it deep. So, and Sarni's real motivated in this draft. Like, I've never seen Sarni so motivated in the draft. He's a draft guy as well. Don't get it twisted, but he's telling me guys now. So make sure you subscribe to the channel.
When you have 6 picks in the top 110, 5 in the top 90, this is why you don't necessarily need to go quarterback. This is a team and roster building draft this year. With a brand new GM. So whatever the Dolphins and Chris Greer's tendencies was, this is a Chris Greer pick. We don't know it yet. We don't know it yet. So I couldn't be more excited for a draft in 5-6 years.
Sonny, I said I have the most whether it works or not, I don't know. I'm not, Ty Simpson will get drafted by the Rams. I will say this about Ty Simpson. I wouldn't take him at 11, but I'm doing the work on him now to probably drop a scouting report on him, a short, small video. And I like some of the things he does. He's got there's a little Bo Nix in there, right? Like that kind of feel to him. But I wouldn't take him at 11. I think we'll end up going in the first round because some team will push him up. But I'm not wasting the shot at the quarterback. Because it's a new regime, but you only got so many shots to take quarterbacks in round 1 or 2. Like I don't think you're going to waste a bullet in this draft. I think you take one in the mid round, 3rd, 4th. I see a lot of people all of a sudden on the Taylor Green bandwagon, Sonny. But I agree with Robert. BPA all the way. This is especially in this draft.
It's BPA of major need, and the Dolphins need everything, so it's BPA.
My man, Finn Sammy.
Sammy.
All right, let's round it out here with the DC. We haven't hired the DC. Weaver's getting an in-person interview with the Cardinals. Let's hope we would have had 2 more 3rd-round picks if we. That's the reason I want Weave to get a job here. Weaver's got Cardinals is probably the last shot. So some of the DC names we mentioned with Jacob is Sean Duggan, the 32-year-old linebacker coach. Seems like a leader in the clubhouse. No surprise, he worked with Hafley.
Boston College times.
Boston College. He was a linebacker at Boston College, so he's a leader. But man, my favorite is Clint Hurt, former defensive tackle for the University of Miami. And then last year he coached the Eagles defensive line, all that talent. Seahawks defensive coordinator in I think 22 or 23. He was over 20 years of experience. And if you see him physically, ain't nobody talking back to Clint Hurt. I'll put it through that way, Jason. Like they interviewed Clint Hurt. He's a big boy. Like he's a no nonsense. He's really known for developing defensive linemen. So Clint Hurt, and then the other guy, I would say also in the mix is Tim Lukabu, the Jaguars linebacker coach. He worked with Hafley with the Bucks and the Niners, and he was the Boston College defensive coordinator for 3 years during Hafley's tenure. Any thoughts? Do you think it's Duggan in the clubhouse? Any thoughts on those guys and on the DC?
Well, first thing to know is that, I think the most important thing here is the relationship already built with Hafley. Hafley's going to be the one calling the shots. He's calling the plays. He's the head coach who is essentially the defensive coordinator. All right. So he is the guy doing everything. So I think Duggan makes complete sense with the familiarity. If there was a roulette table with headshots of candidates, I'm putting my chip on him.
Yeah, we'll see. But I like what they've done so far. I like the group they brought in. It's veteran coaching, a lot of experience at the wide receiver and special teams. It's interesting. There's hopium running through our veins right now, Dolphin fans. So make sure you're subscribed to us. Stick with us.
It's a new strand.
Hopium is running through our veins. I think it's
a new version.
A new version of hopium, but this one might work. I don't know, but it's going to be a fun next few months. We're going to have you covered as always. We'll be back Wednesday. We won't announce the guest yet. We're waiting on final confirmation, but the guy's he's in the building. He's talked to John Eric Sullivan. Let's put it that way, and Jeff Hafley personally. So stick to that. And then always the War Room. We're either back this week or next week. We'll have the War Room back. I think we might do our first mock draft. I'm not sure yet. We're going to have fun with that. But make sure you guys always subscribe, thumbs up, follow us, social media and everything. We appreciate everybody who's been in the chat tonight. I mean, it's been wonderful. And thanks to Jacob Westendorf for joining us from Packers on SI. Go check his stuff out. We appreciate all you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Any final thoughts, Sonny, when we sign off here?
When everyone's looking at players, don't look at just stats. Don't look at just stats because, a lot of things go. You know where I'm going with this one.
Yeah.
Don't look at two sacks and say this guy's not a good pass rusher. This guy's a good defensive lineman.
Yeah.
An overall run stopping guy. Celtic folk. Just do your homework on him.
Yeah.
But in all things, look at a lot of things beyond stats. Stats tell a story. It's not the whole book.
Yeah, I agree. Well, everybody stay safe, stay warm. Jason, everything good with you? You got the shovel out. I mean,
I didn't get the shovel out. I outsourced. I paid a truck to do it. So.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm in Florida here. We didn't participate in this whole thing, but everybody stay safe. Who's in this weather? I mean, it's crazy. All the pictures and photos and videos I've seen. Stay warm there, Sonny. Until next time, we'll see you guys Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in, and everybody stay safe. Stay Fins faithful. We are out. Thank you, guys.